Ever wondered what desperate medieval people tried when the Black Death killed half of Europe's population? These shocking cures range from bizarre to dangerous, revealing humanity's desperation during history's deadliest pandemic. Today I'm exposing the most unbelievable plague remedies attempted: bloodletting extremes. Medieval physicians believed the plague resulted from corrupted blood that required immediate removal through extreme bloodletting procedures. Patients were subjected to massive blood loss through multiple vein openings, often weakening them further during their illness. Medical theory claimed that removing bad humors would restore bodily balance and cure disease. These procedures frequently caused more harm than the plague itself, hastening death rather than providing relief. Urine therapy. Desperate plague sufferers consumed their own urine, believing it contained healing properties that could cure the disease from within. Patients drank fresh urine multiple times daily, while others applied it topically to plague buboes and infected areas. Some physicians recommended animal urine as more potent medicine, leading people to consume horse or cow urine. Medieval medical texts claimed urine purified the blood and expelled disease-causing toxins, making this practice widespread throughout plague-affected regions. Crushing emeralds. Wealthy plague victims crushed precious emeralds into powder and consumed the mixture, believing gemstones possessed supernatural healing powers. This expensive remedy reflected medieval theories that stones contained divine properties capable of curing any disease. Desperate nobles spent fortunes grinding diamonds, rubies, and sapphires into medicinal powders that were mixed with wine or water. Different gems were prescribed for specific symptoms: emeralds for fever, diamonds for strength, sapphires for divine protection. These costly remedies bankrupted families while providing no medical benefit against the plague's devastating effects. Dead animal applications. Medieval plague treatments included placing freshly killed chickens directly onto plague buboes, believing the dead animals would absorb the disease from human patients. Physicians recommended various creatures, including pigeons, rabbits, and even toads, as drawing poultices that supposedly transferred illness from people to animals. This practice reflected medieval understanding that disease could move between living beings through direct contact. Patients endured hours with decomposing animals strapped to infected areas, while family members replaced dead creatures with fresh ones. The superstition extended to using animal organs, blood, and other body parts as topical applications throughout the treatment process. Some physicians prescribed specific animals for different plague symptoms: white chickens for fever, black cats for buboes, live frogs for general infection. The ritual often involved killing the animal directly on the patient's body to ensure immediate disease transfer. Wealthy families employed servants specifically to maintain fresh animal supplies, while poor families scavenged dead rodents from streets. This grotesque treatment caused additional infections and hastened death rather than providing any medical benefit to plague sufferers. Religious flagellation. Religious movements emerged during the plague, encouraging public self-whipping as penance for humanity's sins that supposedly caused God's wrath through disease. Flagellant processions moved through plague-stricken cities, with participants beating themselves bloody while praying for divine intervention. These extreme religious responses reflected medieval belief that the plague represented divine punishment, requiring physical suffering to appease God's anger. Groups of flagellants traveled between towns, performing public penance rituals that often spread disease further through crowded gatherings. The practice became so extreme that church authorities eventually banned flagellant movements, recognizing they caused more harm than healing. Many participants believed their suffering would end the plague, leading to increasingly severe self-inflicted injuries and community-wide hysteria during the pandemic's worst periods. Flagellant groups developed elaborate rituals involving specific numbers of lashes, prayer sequences, and public confessions. Some practitioners died from their self-inflicted wounds, believing martyrdom would save their communities from plague devastation. The movement attracted desperate people seeking any means of ending the pandemic through spiritual intervention. Mercury inhalation. Medieval physicians believed mercury vapors could purge plague from the body. Patients were confined in rooms thick with mercury fumes, or mercury-based ointments mixed with arsenic and vinegar were rubbed onto their skin. The theory was that this toxic substance would drive out the poison of plague. Instead of healing, mercury caused severe burns, organ failure, and accelerated death. Despite its deadly effects, mercury remained a popular plague treatment for centuries, showing how desperation led to dangerous medical practices. Wealthy families built special mercury chambers in their homes, while poor patients were treated in communal fumigation houses. Some physicians recommended daily mercury baths or drinking mercury-infused wine to cleanse internal organs completely from plague corruption. Theriac remedies. Medieval physicians prescribed complex theriac mixtures containing dozens of ingredients including viper's flesh, exotic spices, and rare herbs imported from distant lands. These ancient remedies required months to prepare and cost enormous sums, making them accessible only to wealthy plague victims seeking expensive cures. Original theriac recipes included over 60 ingredients ranging from common herbs to powdered unicorn horn and dragon's blood. Apothecaries charged premium prices for authentic theriac, claiming it provided universal protection against all poisons and diseases. The preparation process involved aging ingredients for years while adding new components according to ancient Greek and Roman medical texts. Wealthy families stockpiled theriac before plague outbreaks, believing the expensive mixture would protect them from infection. Despite containing potentially harmful ingredients like mercury and lead, theriac remained popular throughout medieval Europe as the ultimate plague remedy for those who could afford it. Master apothecaries guarded their theriac recipes as valuable trade secrets, with some formulations taking decades to complete properly. The most expensive versions included ground pearls, gold flakes, and rare eastern spices worth fortunes in medieval markets. Toad poultices. One bizarre plague remedy involved placing live toads directly on buboes, the painful swellings caused by plague. People believed toads would absorb the disease poison. When the toad died, it was considered proof the treatment worked. Dried toad powder was also mixed into ointments or wine as medicine. This grotesque practice not only failed to cure plague but often introduced additional infections through the open wounds. The treatment reflected medieval beliefs about disease transfer and the desperate measures people took when facing the Black Death's devastation. Families kept collections of live toads specifically for medical emergencies, while apothecaries sold preserved toad remedies at premium prices. Some practitioners bound multiple toads to patients simultaneously, believing larger numbers would extract poison more effectively from infected bodies. Astrological alignments. Medieval physicians blamed the plague on unfavorable planetary conjunctions and prescribed treatments timed according to astrological calculations and star positions. Medical astrology determined optimal timing for bloodletting, purging, and other treatments based on lunar phases and planetary alignments affecting different body parts. Physicians consulted detailed astrological charts before treating plague patients, believing celestial influences determined treatment success or failure. Protective amulets were crafted according to astrological specifications, incorporating specific metals, gems, and symbols aligned with favorable planetary influences. Patients wore elaborate talismans designed to counteract malevolent stellar influences supposedly causing their illness. Treatment schedules followed complex astrological calendars that determined when medicines would be most effective based on cosmic conditions. Some physicians refused to treat patients during astrologically unfavorable periods, believing intervention would prove futile or harmful. This integration of astronomy with medicine reflected medieval understanding that earthly events were controlled by celestial forces, requiring proper astronomical knowledge for effective healing. Astrological physicians charged premium fees for consultations that included detailed horoscope calculations and personalized treatment timing. University-trained doctors spent years studying astronomical texts alongside medical knowledge, believing both sciences were essential for successful healing. The plague's timing was analyzed through astrological lenses, with scholars blaming specific planetary conjunctions for the pandemic's devastating spread across Europe. Aromatic protection. Medieval plague prevention relied heavily on aromatic protection through constant exposure to strong scents believed to purify corrupt air causing disease. Physicians recommended carrying posies of herbs, flowers, and spices while burning incense continuously to create protective aromatic barriers. Plague doctors wore leather masks filled with aromatic substances, believing sweet smells would neutralize poisonous miasma-spreading infection. Wealthy families burned expensive aromatics including frankincense, myrrh, and imported spices throughout their homes during plague outbreaks. Clothing was treated with perfumes and aromatic oils thought to repel disease-causing vapors from contaminated environments. Public spaces were fumigated with burning aromatic woods and herbs in attempts to purify entire communities from plague infection. The theory of miasma suggested that bad air caused disease, making aromatic protection a logical defense according to medieval medical understanding. Streets were strewn with aromatic herbs during plague processions while buildings were smudged with burning aromatics to cleanse contaminated spaces. Professional perfumers developed specialized plague protection blends combining lavender, rosemary, thyme, and other antimicrobial herbs. Pomanders filled with cloves and other spices were carried constantly, with wealthy individuals commissioning elaborate silver cases for their aromatic protection devices. Entire city districts organized communal fumigation efforts, burning massive bonfires of aromatic materials in public squares. Bizarre surgical attempts. Medieval surgeons attempted drastic procedures including lancing plague buboes with hot irons, removing infected tissue with crude instruments, and performing emergency operations without anesthesia or sterile conditions. Desperate surgical interventions involved cutting open swollen lymph nodes to drain infected material, often causing secondary infections that hastened patient death. Some physicians attempted to remove entire infected areas through primitive amputation procedures performed with basic tools and no pain relief for suffering patients. Cauterization with red-hot metal instruments was used to burn infected tissue, causing excruciating pain while providing no medical benefit against plague bacteria. Trepanation procedures involved drilling holes in patients' skulls to release evil spirits, supposedly causing plague symptoms and mental disturbance. Bloodletting through surgical cuts was combined with other treatments including purging, vomiting, and various topical applications applied to open wounds. These surgical attempts reflected medieval physicians' desperation to try any intervention that might save plague victims from certain death. Without understanding of bacterial infection or proper surgical techniques, these procedures typically worsened patients' conditions while causing additional trauma and suffering during their final days. Surgical tools were rarely cleaned between patients, spreading infection throughout medical facilities and contributing to higher mortality rates. Some surgeons experimented with transplanting healthy tissue onto infected areas, believing fresh flesh could overcome diseased tissue through natural healing processes. Emergency amputations were attempted when plague infection appeared to spread through limbs, though patients typically died from shock and blood loss rather than recovering from the radical procedures. The historical context of these treatments reveals how the Black Death, which killed an estimated 7.5200 million people between 1347 to 1351, drove medieval society to attempt increasingly desperate measures. Medical knowledge was limited to ancient Greek and Roman texts, religious doctrine, and folk remedies passed down through generations. The plague's devastating mortality rate, killing 30–60% of Europe's population in just 4 years, created unprecedented panic and desperation. Medieval medicine operated under the humoral theory, believing illness resulted from imbalances in 4 bodily humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. This theoretical framework led to treatments focused on rebalancing humors through bloodletting, purging, and dietary changes, rather than addressing actual disease mechanisms. Religious interpretations viewed the plague as divine punishment, encouraging spiritual remedies alongside medical treatments. The lack of effective treatments drove people to try increasingly extreme measures. Wealthy families exhausted fortunes purchasing exotic remedies, while poor families resorted to folk cures and desperate improvisation. The absence of scientific method meant treatments weren't tested for effectiveness, allowing harmful practices to persist and spread throughout plague-affected regions. These historical remedies demonstrate how fear and desperation can drive people to dangerous behaviors when facing existential threats. The Black Death's unprecedented mortality rate created conditions where any potential cure seemed worth attempting, regardless of logic or safety. Understanding this context helps explain why medieval people tried such shocking treatments during humanity's darkest pandemic period. These shocking medieval plague remedies reveal humanity's desperate struggle against an incomprehensible disease. While these treatments seem absurd today, they reflect the limited medical knowledge and extreme desperation of people facing civilization's greatest pandemic. Modern medicine's evidence-based approach shows how far we've advanced. Ready to discover more shocking historical medical practices? Subscribe for weekly insights into medical history that shaped modern healthcare.